So Gert Emmens and Ruud Heij.
And you're watching liveprog.
Yeah, man.
I like to see my ongoing journey through the vast landscape of music as an ongoing search for emotion. Because that's what music is, emotion. If you listen to an album or a song or a performer on stage, it has to touch you, it has to do something with you. There are a different kind of emotions that you find, and that's being translated into music. One such emotion is the emotion of being lost, and that is a particularly strong emotion. And that is an emotion that Gert Emmens and Ruud Heij explore on this album, Lost in the Swamp. Lost in the Swamp is the 6th album already by Gert Emmens and Ruud Heij. They've been working together for quite a while. Both of them really have a history in electronic music. Both of them started making music at a very young age. Looking at Ruud Heij, the sequence man, when he was at a young age he discovered the music by Tangerine Dream and Klaus Schulze, and well, that kind of prompted him to make music himself as well. It will be of course no surprise that his music is very much in the vein of this Berlin school. He worked as a solo musician for quite some time, but he also worked with others, formed, well, groups or bands. To name a few names that are very noteworthy that Ruud Heij was participated in: Patchwork, Kubeschnitt and Free System Project. And as I mentioned it, his main weapon of choice are sequences, really beautiful and really heavy ones, you know, and that is something you find very much in this album. Gert Emmens also started at a young age. He didn't start out as an electronic musician right away. He started out as a drummer. And he played in a couple of bands, you know, in his school days, more rock orientated. But then he also learned to play keyboards, and from that moment on he moved into the electronic music direction. And he's been releasing albums under his own name since 1995, and he released quite a few albums and they are really beautiful. I have had the pleasure of listening to a couple of them. But he also worked together with other people, but that is more in recent years. He worked, for example, with Cadence Haven, a musician from Bangladesh, and they released 3 albums together. And of course he works together with Ruud Heij, for example on this one, but also on other albums. The nice part about this album is that it's a concept album. Now I mentioned it, the whole feeling of lost. That is the center theme you find on this album. In the booklet you find the story on which Gert and Ruud based the music. So you have a bit of a little aid in understanding what they try to bring with this album. And because it has 6 tracks, and if you look at the tracks you can kind of follow the story. So let's just go through the tracks and follow the story of Lost in the Swamp. The opening track is called Lost. When you read the story here, it's about a man. It doesn't have to, well, you know, you can picture it anywhere you like. You know, that's the beauty of the story. A very adventurous man who wants to go somewhere. And he comes to a swamp and he knows that no man has ever returned from it. Yet, for some reason, you know, he feels bold, maybe he feels lucky, I don't know, but he enters it. Now, of course, it's not a surprise, you know, once he's in, he can't get out. I don't know if you've ever been lost, but the first part of the feeling is not entirely anxiety, because you also have this kind of hope that you will be found, or that someone will find you, or that you will find a way out. So the music in this track, Lost, is not as dark as you might think. It still has a very, very positive side. It has a very uplifting, very bright sound to it. And here you see the musicians both having a different background together, creating this beautiful music. The sequences, of course, by Ruud Heij, and the beautiful melodies by Gert Emmens. moving on to the story and moving on to the second track, because at a certain point the feeling dawns, you know, I'm lost, I'm not going to get out. And the way Gert and Ruud have translated that emotion into music is what you find in the second track, Swallowed by Immensity. And here you have a totally different sound than what you first have. First you have, you know, sequences, you have melodies. In this second track you have soundscapes, and they're really dark, they're gloomy, they're foreboding, they're very eerie, you know, you feel like a ghost story. It gives you a very uneasy feeling when you listen to it, and that's the feeling that you have when you're really completely lost, when you realize, you know, I am lost and I'm not going to get out of here. Now, that is the emotion you have, and I don't know how they do it, you know, music-wise, but it's very beautiful done. Although, you know, as I said, it gives this uneasy feeling. So I'm very happy that we can move on in the story, but also in the music, because the music changes again. Learning to Survive is the third track. I mean, you can imagine that once this man realizes, you know, I'm not getting out of here, you have to make the best of the situation you are in. You have to learn to adapt. And that is what happens in that track, Learning to Survive. This is the longest track on the album. It is just over 27 minutes. Now, of course, in electronic music, that is nothing strange, you know, and especially in the Berlin school form of electronic music, you find that a lot. But what I like about this track is the way that Gert and Ruud really change the emotions as the song goes on, because the same happens with the man. You know, he has to learn to adapt. So in the beginning he'll feel helpless, he'll feel sad, but along the way he will learn to change his circumstances and make the best of it. So the music also moves into a more happy, positive, brighter, uplifting direction. I love the beautiful sequences in here. I love the rhythms. I love the beautiful melodies, and the way that the song kind of constantly changes as it goes by. You know, it's a very beautiful track. That whole feeling of, you know, his life kind of taking its course in the swamp is continued in the next track, the fourth track, Life in the Swamp. What I particularly like about this track is, next to, again, the beautiful sequence. I really love these sequences, and I really am a big fan of Ruud Heij on this album, because again, you know, it's the feeling, it's the emotion that the music brings, and it's sometimes not easy to explain in words. You have to just listen to it. But here, the melodies, the parts that Gert plays really stand out. I love this beautiful sort of whistling sound. I don't know how they do it, but that kind of sound I very much like, and also the nice rhythm and the nice bass, the nice warm bass sound in that song. Very beautiful. Where the man has accepted his fate, you know, he is there and he won't get out. He made the best of it, but then the point comes where resting in your situation turns into, you know, appreciating, enjoying your situation. Picture yourself in some remote area where no one is, and we're just surrounded by nature, and you just sit there and you listen to the sounds around you, and you listen and you watch at the beautiful nature. That is the emotion that you find in Serenity of Nature. And again, style-wise, it resembles the second track, although this is of course not really dark and gloomy. This is the really beautiful soundscapes, kind of translating the serenity of the nature around you, and the changes that it mentally brings to you into music. And that is also, you know, if you listen to my story, if you read the story, if you listen to the music, this whole thing can be used as a metaphor. You know, whatever situation you are, you can make the best of it, or you can still find things, even though you are in a lost situation, you still can find things to enjoy. You know, so I really like the thought, the idea behind the music, and the way they translated the idea into sound. Very well done. I really enjoy listening to this album. The last track is the shortest track on the album, 2 minutes. a little over, The Way Out. There you are the point, you know, the man found a way out of the swamp. And then you have the question, what am I going to do? Am I going back to my old life, or am I going to stay in my new life? Well, the question remains unanswered. The question is for you. But musically, I really like the whole journey through emotions that Gert and Ruud bring on this album. I had a lot of fun listening to the album. It's really beautiful music. I gotta say, it is a long album. It's almost 80 minutes of music, so it's quite a lot. But nevertheless, once you're in the music and you're listening to it and you're enjoying it, you kind of lose track of time. You know, you forget about everything unless the album is finished, and then you're brought back to reality. I gotta be honest, you know, this is not music that probably everybody will enjoy. I'd say, you know, some interest in the Berlin School of Electronic Music would definitely help, but you know, me being very new to electronic music, I can say I absolutely love this album. I really enjoyed it, so I'm going to recommend it. Very simple. Even if you are unfamiliar with electronic music and you have no idea what the Berlin School means, I'd say give this album a chance, because this is really beautiful music. You will absolutely enjoy it. Gert Emmens and Ruud Heij, Lost in the Swamp.